It started with a knock. Not the polite, casual kind. This was sharp, frantic, and loud enough to cut through the stillness of my quiet Saturday morning like a blaring alarm. I was halfway through my coffee, enjoying the calm on the porch of my cabin, when the screen door shook violently under the pounding. When I opened it, there she stood, Karen. Yes, that Karen. Clipboard clutched in hand, posture rigid, looking like she was seconds away from holding a press conference. "We need full access to the cabin today," she announced, her tone flat and overly practiced, dripping with unwarranted confidence. "The HOA has scheduled a community retreat. Around 100 people will be here by noon." I blinked, my coffee cup frozen halfway to my lips. "Karen, this is my private cabin. No one told me a word about a retreat." Unfazed, she began flipping through her clipboard as if it was some sacred text. "According to HOA Rule 13, subsection 4, any shed amenities." "This isn't a shed amenity," I interrupted, jabbing a finger toward the iron gate I'd installed myself 2 years ago. "I bought this land. I take care of it myself. You don't get to host your little parties here." A pink flush crept up her cheeks as her eyes darted toward the road. Behind her, vans and SUVs were pulling up in a line, honking impatiently as if they were arriving at a sold-out concert. I spotted folding tables stacked high in the bed of a pickup truck. "You're making a scene," she hissed, her voice sharp but shaky. "You're going to embarrass yourself in front of the whole community." "Oh, you want a scene?" I said evenly, stepping back inside. I grabbed my keys, walked right past her stunned little entourage, and made my way to the gate. Normally, I left it open. Not today. The heavy iron bars slammed shut with a metallic clang. One lock clicked. Then a second, for good measure. Karen's composure cracked. "You can't just lock out the neighborhood." "I just did," I replied calmly, turning on my heel and heading back toward the porch. "Let's see how far that clipboard of yours gets you now." Phones were out instantly, recording every second. Someone in the crowd shouted about calling the sheriff. Karen looked like she might crumble right there, but I wasn't done. What she didn't seem to know, or maybe had forgotten, was that my property wasn't just fenced off. I had cameras covering every square foot of it, every angle, every corner. As I sipped the last of my now cold coffee, I started pulling the footage onto my phone. If anyone dared to step onto my property without permission, it would all be on record. Karen had just started a war, and she'd picked the wrong opponent. 10 minutes later, she was pacing like a commander with no army. Her so-called guests kept arriving, piling up behind the locked gate, irritated and confused. I could hear her frantic phone calls even from the porch. "Yes, officer." "He's obstructing an HOA-approved gathering." "No, I don't have written permission, but this is a community issue." I chuckled quietly. Classic Karen. 4 years, she had twisted HOA rules to her liking, shutting down yard sales she deemed unsightly, harassing teenagers for riding their bikes too fast, and fining neighbors for paint colors that didn't match her sacred palette. But this, trying to seize my private property for her little event, that was a stunt the law wouldn't back up. Sure enough, about 20 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser rolled to a stop at the end of the road. The deputy stepped out, hand resting casually on his belt, eyes scanning the circus that had formed in front of my gate. Karen rushed toward him like he was her personal savior. "There!" she barked, finger stabbing the air in my direction. "He's locking us out of the retreat space. We had it reserved." The deputy approached, calm as ever. "Sir," he said, voice steady, "would you mind coming down here for a moment?" I strolled toward the gate, phone in hand, paperwork ready. "Afternoon, officer," I said smoothly. "Just so we're clear." "This land is mine," I said firmly, holding up the paperwork as proof. Before the deputy could respond, Karen's shrill voice sliced through the tension. "He's exploiting the property for himself. It's clearly marked as part of a shared community space in our records." I passed the deputy my deed without a word. "Not anymore. It used to be part of the HOA's territory 5 years ago. When I bought this cabin, I had it removed from their jurisdiction. This property stands completely separate now." The deputy studied the documents carefully, his expression neutral. I didn't need to hear his words to know how this would play out, The look on Karen's face told me everything. He said finally, offering a small shrug. Unless you've got a court order or a valid legal claim, he's entirely within his rights. You can't use this property without his consent. Karen opened her mouth, but only a weak, choked sound slipped out. Behind her, the so-called retreat guests were whispering, their cheerful chatter fading into uneasy murmurs. The deputy turned his attention back to me. If anyone tries to force their way past that gate, give us a call immediately. Will do, I said with a calm nod. Karen's plan had fallen apart spectacularly, but I knew her too well to think that would be the end of it. She wasn't the type to back down. She regrouped, plotted, and came back swinging. Sure enough, by Monday morning, 3 new letters were taped to my gate, each one dripping with her brand of faux authority and legal nonsense. The first was a notice of violation, claiming I was engaging in unauthorized use of former HOA land. The second threatened a $500 fine for every single day I refused to comply. And the third, bolded like some official proclamation, demanded that I allow the community to host a make-up retreat within 7 days or face further consequences. I didn't bother reading them twice. Straight to the wood stove they went. One flick of a match, and they curled into blackened ash. But don't mistake my reaction for carelessness. I knew exactly what Karen was doing. This wasn't about the letters. She wanted to rattle me, drown me in threats and paperwork until I caved and handed over my land. If that was her plan, she'd miscalculated. The very next morning, I decided it was time to put everything in black and white. I drafted an email to the HOA board, attaching every piece of evidence I had, my purchase contract, the certified boundary survey, and a clean excerpt from the 2020 amendment, the very document that explicitly stated my property was no longer under HOA authority. My message was short and sharp. Any attempt to enter, claim, or manage this property will be considered harassment and will be dealt with legally. A few hours later, the reply landed in my inbox. We acknowledge your exemption, wrote the HOA secretary. Karen has been advised to cease all actions. We apologize for any misunderstanding. I almost laughed. Misunderstanding? Karen wasn't confused. She was livid. That polite apology was nothing but damage control, the board scrambling to distance themselves from the chaos she'd created. I didn't blame them, honestly. She had dragged them into a mess of her own making. But just when I started to think things might finally settle down, my stomach dropped. On the HOA's community Facebook page, a brand new post appeared. Community picnic rescheduled. Now at Daniel's retreat cabin. My name. My property. Plastered across social media like an open invitation. I took a screenshot immediately and fired off a comment beneath it. This is false. This land is private property and not available for any HOA event. Anyone showing up will be trespassing. 10 minutes later, the post vanished, but it didn't matter. The damage was already done. People had seen it, and Karen had once again rallied her little army. I could feel it. She wasn't done with me. And, of course, I was right. 3 nights later, at exactly 12:42 a.m., the crunch of tires on gravel jolted me awake. My motion sensors lit up, painting the driveway in a pulsing red glow. I yanked on my boots, grabbed my flashlight, and pulled up my camera feeds on my phone. There, parked just outside the locked gate, was a black SUV. 4 figures moved in the shadows, unloading folding chairs and a huge canopy, setting up in the dead of night like they thought no one would notice. I tore down the gravel path, flashlight beam slicing through the darkness. Hey! I barked. This is private property. What the hell are you doing? They froze mid-step, caught like deer in headlights. One of them gripped a clipboard like a shield, while the others shifted uneasily, torn between bolting and arguing. Karen said this was cleared. One of them stammered. Yeah. Well, Karen lied. I shot back, stepping closer, my voice sharp as steel. You got 30 seconds to load up and get out before I call the sheriff, and this time, I will press charges. No one challenged me. They scrambled, tossing folding chairs and supplies back into the SUV, muttering under their breath as they retreated. I recorded every second, just in case I needed evidence later. Their taillights disappeared into the night, but my phone buzzed almost instantly. A text from an unknown number lit up the screen. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Remember, you still live here. No signature. But I didn't need one. Karen. That was it. No more games. I sat down at my desk, logged onto the county records website, and dug up every scrap of documentation I could find, the HOA bylaws, updated land division maps, even the official minutes from the 2020 board meeting confirming my parcel had been excluded from the HOA's authority. I organized it all into a clean, airtight digital folder, added the new video footage, and sent everything straight to the HOA's legal counsel, including a screenshot of Karen's little threat. The next morning, my phone rang. Mark, the HOA president. His voice was strained, exhausted. Daniel, he sighed. Look, Karen acted completely on her own. None of this had the board's approval. We're calling an emergency meeting tonight to vote on removing her as event coordinator. This has gone too far. Good, I replied flatly. Make sure she understands. One more stunt like this, and the next call goes to the sheriff. That evening, I sat on my porch and watched as cars filled the lot at the community center down the road. Karen showed up last, arms folded, her face pale and tight with anger. By the time the meeting adjourned, the decision was official. Karen was stripped of her title. For a week, things actually quieted down. Well, mostly. Some neighbors still whispered, a few still convinced I'd overreacted. Others stopped by to apologize, admitting Karen had fed them lies from the start. I didn't hold grudges. I didn't want enemies. I just wanted to be left alone in peace. But Karen, she wasn't finished. Sunday morning arrived warm and bright. I was stacking firewood into the shed when I heard it, the unmistakable crunch of tires on gravel. Rounding the corner, I froze. There was Karen, standing at the gate like she owned the place, flanked by two men I didn't recognize. One carried a rolled-up banner. The other held a camera. I walked down the path slowly, keeping my voice calm. Need something? Karen smiled, not kindly, but with that smug, calculating grin she perfected. I'm filming a documentary, she announced, about how community spaces are being stolen by selfish individuals. We're featuring your gate in the next segment. I blinked. You're filming on my property. Outside your property, she snapped, motioning to the cameraman. Public roadside. Perfectly legal. Technically, she was right. But this wasn't about a documentary. This was her way of twisting her humiliation into some kind of self-righteous crusade. The camera started rolling. Karen unfurled the banner. Bring back our space. I gave them 10 seconds. Then I turned, walked back inside, and flipped the breaker for the gate security horn. A sharp, piercing alarm exploded through the quiet morning, echoing down the road like a siren. Birds scattered from the trees. Karen jumped, flinching hard. The cameraman nearly dropped his gear. This is harassment, she screeched. And trespassing is fine. I shouted from the porch. Just so you know, I've already called the sheriff. You've got 2 minutes to clear out before you're cited for illegal protesting in a residential zone. That last part. A bluff. But Karen didn't know that. Without another word, they broke down the setup. No speech, no dramatic closing. Just 3 furious figures trudging back to their car, which coughed and sputtered before finally disappearing down the road. 2 hours later, another knock sounded at my door, but this time, it wasn't Karen. Mark stood there, HOA letter in hand. The board voted unanimously, he said. No more events, no more claims, no more nonsense involving your property. And Karen, she's been suspended from all HOA activities for 6 months. I closed the door, a grin spreading across my face. The gate stayed locked. My cabin stayed mine. And Karen, for once, she finally stayed quiet. She thought she could take over my place for her 100-person circus, but she never saw the gate coming. If you got a kick out of watching her plans crash and burn, hit that like button, drop a comment about what you'd have done, and subscribe for more HOA chaos, one locked gate at a time.